Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Haas. Happy Monday to you all. I hope you all had an amazing weekend. And because it's Monday, you know what that means. We're taking a look at Go Collect's hottest comics for the week. Now, for those who don't know, Go Collect puts out a weekly article that analyzes the hottest selling comic books based on volume of sales and movement in the market. So like I like to do, let's take a look at the books and see what's on fire. But before I get into the books, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, do one of those things, I would appreciate it. But let us get into the video here today. Of course, I will put a link in the description to this article that is written by Matt Tuck if you want to do further reading, but of course I will give you guys my analysis here today. And coming in at the number 5 spot is a great book, one that I think all of us should own, and this of course is X-Men Volume 2, number 1, Special Collector's Edition, up 23 spots, sitting in the 40th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course you guys know this is the X-Men series that came out in 1991, written by Chris Claremont and drawn by Jim Lee. And this, of course, you guys know, is the highest selling comic book of all time. I believe this still holds the record for most copies sold. I think there were 1.5 million or so that went out in the market. And the one that, of course, that we're talking about in this video here today is the Special Collector's Edition. Like I mentioned, this is a book that had 5 different variant covers. And really, when I think back on it, like, it's not like this was the first book to ever do variant covers, but it was like, you know, I think really set, you know, the precedent for what variant covers could do. Whether that was for good or for bad, I'll leave it up to you guys to decide. But this one right here, the Special Collector's Edition, would have been known as, I guess, cover E or maybe cover number 5. It would feature a wraparound cover of all of the covers on this book. So if you open up, you know, the back of it and the interior pages of the cover, it would fold out and you would see covers A through D on top of them. Of course, with this little bit of a silver treatment, which is different than what you would normally see in this picture with cover A. But, you know, this is one of those books I think is really interesting. I think a lot of collectors like to get their hands on these X-Men 1 books. I think they're just good for the collection. I've made mention of them, like in my video of starting a collection on a budget. This, I think, is still a good book to get your hands on. And even though there are, like, you know, tons and tons of copies out there in the market, I do think that this is a book that everybody would like to have in their collection. So ironically, it does inflate the prices just a little bit. And when we get X-Men in the MCU, I mean, there's going to be a lot of collectors that want to own a cool X-Men key, but they won't be able to afford, you know, X-Men number 1 or giant size X-Men number 1. So like I always say, they go on to the next best thing. And this is, you know, for all intents and purposes, a great book to have for the X-Men title. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, we'll take a look down here. We'll see there are some 9.9s on the census, but we don't need to really discuss those. Let's take a look at the 9.8s, 2,100 on the census. Fair market value suggested around the $130 range, although 1 year moving 111, 30-day moving 113. And you can see this book really has had an interesting journey where I think it takes little spikes and dips all throughout the market. I think that this is a book, because it has such a high volume, is always going to have these major spikes when we see, you know, X-Men out there, or we see X-Men movies, or, you know, hype in the market. And then, of course, you know, there's going to be an influx of inventory when that happens. So the prices are going to correct pretty hard overall. You can see here the prices really shot up in the 2021 boom, selling around the $138 range, had its major correction, but now is slowly starting to, you know, get hot once again in the market, kind of sitting around that $123 range, at least the last couple sales or so. We'll see here, 132, 120, slash price, 99, 97. So, you know, a book that is really going to be flirting with that $100 price point, and one that I think, you know, for that budget level, even if it's a book that, you know, you're not going to retire on, it does feel like an affordable, cool X-Men key. All right, let's go on now to the 4th hottest comic of the week. And the 4th hottest comic of the week is one that has been very hot in the market. This one, of course, is Amazing Spider-Man number 210, up 28 spots, sitting in the 44th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first appearance by the character known as Madam Web that came out in 1980 by Denny O'Neil. And I'm sure you guys have already heard the news, but in case you haven't, Sony had recently announced that Dakota Johnson, famously of 50 Shades of Grey, is going to be playing Madam Web in her own solo movie amidst the sort of Spider-Verse series of superhero films. So Madam Web making her way onto the screen some point in the future alongside that of, you know, Venom and Morbius and Kraven. And it's really interesting to think about, you know, Madam Web sort of getting her own solo title. I mean, it feels like Sony right now is really milking all of the characters that exist within the Amazing Spider-Man run, being that they have the license to all of these characters, they would really love to create their sort of own MCU franchise. So Madam Web is going to be getting her own movie, and this book absolutely went through the roof. There has been some speculation that, maybe we're not going to get this version of Madam Web. Eventually, Julia Carpenter, also known as Spider-Woman, becomes Madam Web, and it feels like, if we're looking at the age of characters, that might be the direction they would go in. Although maybe they're just going to change the character. I mean, it's like we got Agatha Harkness in the MCU, and, they cast Catherine Hahn. It's not like they decided to cast like an 80 or 90-year-old woman for that role. So same thing goes with this book right here, Amazing Spider-Man 210. Definitely an interesting book right now, and one that has gotten really hot in the wake of the news of Madam Web having her own film. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, we'll take a look at the 9.8s. There's 163 on the census. Fair market value suggests $1,100, but as you can see, 30-day moving, $2,250. So just like that, Go Collect can't even update their numbers. This book has doubled sort of overnight at the 9.8 grade. And you can see like there's been different times in this book's lifespan where it's gotten hot in the market. Maybe it's been even speculated on, like in 2018, maybe there were some announcements about this book. So it had its kind of peaks and valleys. And then with the 2021 boom, it really shot up with the speculation, had a big correction, and now is, at new heights, soaring past, its all-time highs. We can see last couple sales here, $22.50 in February. That's in comparison to earlier in the month, like even just a week before that, it was $14.99. And then a couple weeks before that, $1,200. But of course, if you don't have the budget to get the CGC 9.8, when I go into eBay looking for raw grades of this book, I definitely see it being sold around the $100 to $150 range or so, depending on the grade and depending on the deal you can find for yourself. All right, let's go on now to the third hottest comic of the week. And the third hottest comic of the week is another one that has been very hot in the market for quite some time. This one, of course, is Ultimate Fallout number 4, second print, up 28 spots, sitting in the 26th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, you guys know this is the first appearance of Miles Morales Spider-Man, although it is the second print. So I don't know how you guys feel. Maybe there are those out there who doesn't even feel like this should be a first appearance at all. But, for the sake of this video, we're going to call it the first appearance of Miles Morales Spider-Man in the second printing. And this has been a book that, I think is really interesting in the market. Of course, everybody has been flocking to Ultimate Fallout 4, the first printing of this thing. Everybody wants to collect Miles Morales. The Into the Spider-Verse film was fantastic. We're going to be getting the sequel at some point later this year. It's been heavily speculated that Miles is going to be making his way into the MCU. In fact, there's even rumors right now that, Will Smith's son, Jaden Smith, is, being speculated that he might have been cast for the Miles Morales character. But this book right here, the second printing feels like a good sort of next best thing. The other week I did a video about next best things in the market, and I talked about how a lot of people like to go to those types of books when they can't get their hands on whatever, is the most expensive, first appearance in the market. And this one seems to be a good book, to grab, especially since this actually has a smaller print run than that of Ultimate Fallout 4's first print. And speaking of which, as we dig into the numbers for this one, we'll see the 9.8's 1,440 on the census. That's in comparison to about the, 25 to 3,000 there are for the first printing. Fair market value for this one suggests $600, although 30-day moving, $633. And this has been a book that, has had its spikes like every other book with this comic book market, and it's kind of leveled off overall, but it's kind of sitting in a pretty good place. So back in 2021, record high around the $1,800 range, big correction, and it's kind of leveled off around this $600 plateau. When I go into eBay looking for raw copies of this book, I can definitely find it around the $180 to $220 range or so. All right, let's move on now to the second hottest comic of the week. And the second hottest comic of the week is one that has been a very cool book, kind of highly speculated on in the market for some time. And this one, of course, is Marvel Comics Presents number 72, up 35 spots, sitting in the 34th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, you guys know this is the first appearance of the Weapon X program, and maybe you would consider this the origin of Wolverine, a book that came out in 1991, written by Barry Windsor Smith. And this one has been really hot in the market for quite some time. I mentioned when I was talking about the Miles Morales book, these books that are considered the next best things in the market. And this one right here is a great example of a book that could be considered that next best thing. I mean, we all know that Hulk 181 or Hulk 180 is really above a lot of people's budgets. And if you want to own a cool book for, the Wolverine character, you sort of have to look to different issues out there in the market. So there's books like Wolverine #1 from, 1982. There's Wolverine #1 from 1988. And then there's this book right here, which is the Marvel Comics Presents Wolverine, sort of the origin of the character, the origin of the Weapon X program. And this is actually a really cool book because up until this moment, in terms of like comic book storyline, it wasn't really explained too much of like where Wolverine, kind of got his adamantium. It was always a little bit of a mystery. And this was actually a really, really great read as well because it had this sort of unique storytelling element that it was a very sort of like subjective, almost POV experience from Wolverine where he's in the Weapon X program. So on top of the fact that it is a key issue, it was a very, very cool story as well, and a book that is definitely worth picking up if you can get your hands on it. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, we'll take a look here and we'll see that the 9.8s have 903 on the census. Fair market value suggests around the $400 range. 30-day moving are right around there at the $396 range. But one, like many other books in the market, has had its sort of big correction after the height of the speculation last year in the summer. You can see right here, this book has really, really fallen off in the market. And I think one of the reasons now why it's probably showing up on the Go Collect list is that when books, hit that new floor, there's definitely going to be a lot of buyers that want to buy in at the value that they think is a good price for it. So you can see last couple sales here, 400, 324, 425, 381. So it seems to be the $400 price range is a value that, seems to be a strong support level for this book. And maybe that's one of the reasons why people are jumping onto this thing overall. When we get Wolverine in the MCU and there's like all the fervor around him, possibly we'll get another origin of the character. This will be one of those next best thing books that definitely get hot once again in the market. And then of course, when I go into eBay looking for this thing, I can definitely find raw copies being sold around that $35, $40, $45 range or so. All right, and let's now wrap it up with the hottest comic of the week. And the hottest comic of the week is one that was on this list not too many weeks ago, but once again, it is Nice House on the Lake, #1, up 57 spots, sitting in the 20th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, you guys know this is the first issue of the series Nice House on the Lake, written by one of the hottest writers in comic books today, James Tynion. Now, of course, James Tynion has had a plethora of hot books out in the market. This one right here, he's had, Department of Truth. He's written on Batman, and he's just been one of the writers that, the market has really, really admired their work for quite some time. So a lot of his titles that seem to be, books that are primed to be Netflix shows or HBO series and things like that. All those #1 issues have really, really gotten hot in the market because a lot of people are speculating that this is a writer who's probably, in talks with Hollywood to make some of these books, into actual properties out there in the market. And it's definitely good speculation because it's already been announced that Nice House on the Lake has been optioned by Netflix. And being that it's under sort of the DC umbrella, Matt points out in the article that maybe this could be a co-deal with Netflix. Maybe HBO Max would like to make a Nice House on the Lake series. So a lot of people are thinking that this could be a book that has a bright future ahead of it. But like I've kind of mentioned on the channel before, options are just that. They're just options. I mean, it takes in order for us to get a series on some kind of Netflix streaming platform or whatever the case may be, certainly it starts with an option. But just because a book is optioned doesn't mean we're actually ever going to see it on the screen. But with a writer like James Tynion, those are writers that probably have a lot more pull, and it's probably a safer assumption that their book might actually make it across that green light finish line, so to speak, and actually have their properties made. So Nice House on the Lake, definitely a book that got hot earlier in this year, but has kind of tapered off a little bit. I think the heat has kind of died down from this book, and one of the reasons why it's getting hot back up in the market is kind of like what I mentioned with the Marvel Comics book. This one just has sort of that new floor that people are really looking to buy back in on. So as we dig into the numbers for this one, we'll see 9.8s, 1,778 on the census, fair market value $120, but 30-day moving is 67. So when you see here, last couple sales for this book, you can see 60, 59, 61, 71, 68. So definitely a book that I think coming out of the gate, hitting those pre-screen sales, in the summer of 2021, this book was selling at the $200 range. And then you can see right here, just in the last couple of months, really, really has declined because, that's the thing with options. options is like, it's not going to be overnight that we're going to see this book come onto the screen. So to me, it feels like, for if you can get this book for $60 in a 9.8 and you want to speculate on what could be, a craze like The Boys or Walking Dead or whatever the case may be, $60, it definitely feels like you can do a lot worse with your money for a CGC 9.8 of a book who, honestly, even outside of TV show speculation, was a great read. I mean, this is actually a great series to get your hands on. And if you do want to read it, you can definitely find raw copies for this book, sitting around that $15 to $20 range or so. Well, that is all I have for this video. Those were Go Collect's hottest comics for the week of March 10th. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any of these books? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next video.